This video will walk you through the process of evaluating a website to make sure that it is both credible and relevant to your research. So as most of us do when we have a research project or assignment, I'm going to go to Google and I'm going to type in my topic. The topic that I have chosen to work on for this project is bail reform. The first thing Google invites me to do is to look at scholarly articles for bail reform. When it says scholarly articles, what they're really referring to are articles from academic journals. Typically, that's what they are. That's why it's called Google Scholar. Academic journals can generally be considered credible sources because the articles in academic journals have been written by other scholars and experts in their field. Academic journals are also typically peer-reviewed, which means that other scholars in the same field read the articles before they're published to make sure that they are of sound research. So I do want to check these out at some point, but for right now, since I want to show you websites, I'm going to go back to my first page of hits. Typically, we don't want to just choose the first source that we get, but a really good idea is to look at the URL that's underneath that source. That gives us a sense of whether or not it's even going to be worth our time to click into the article. The first hit that I get from Google is from the Harvard Law Review. So that tells me I probably want to click into this source. Harvard Law School is one of the best known law schools in the country. The fact that this is a law review tells me that I'm going to be looking at some pretty in-depth authoritative information. I want to stay away from really general stuff because that's really not going to help me when it comes time to develop my paper. So I am going to click into this one. And while I'm pretty excited about finding a source from Harvard Law Review, I can't stop there with the questions that I'm going to ask. When we're evaluating sources, a really useful acronym that can help us remember what we're supposed to ask about a source is CRAP. C-R-A-A-P. The C stands for currency. R stands for relevance. The first A stands for authority. The second A stands for accuracy. And the P stands for purpose. So those words all help us remember what we should be looking for when we're evaluating a source. So the first letter, C, currency. How timely is this? So we want to find out, when was this article last published, or when was the site last updated? So I see right here is my publication date, April 14th, 2014, and that is actually today. Today is April 14th, 2019, so I really could not do better regarding timeliness even if I wanted to. So that checks out. Another question that we want to ask for currency has to do with the links that might be in a website. Not all web pages are going to have links, but we want to make sure that if we find a web page that has links, that the links are active, or that might tell us that the source is getting kind of old. So I'm going to start scrolling through the page looking for some links. Well, I don't see links yet. I do see footnotes that tell me I can click into them. And this first one has a link that I can click into. If I look closely, it actually shows me that it's an article from the New Yorker magazine. So I am going to click into that to make sure the link is active. And I'm taken to an article that was published in the New Yorker in September of 2014. A boy was accused of taking a backpack. The courts took the next 3 years of his life. So this isn't the source I'm evaluating right now, but because the New Yorker is actually itself a pretty reputable source, it is a highly regarded authoritative magazine, I want to save this because this source might be useful to me. And what we actually just stumbled upon is one of my favorite ways of doing research, and that is using the references in a good source to find other really good sources. So I'm going to save that tab to come back to later. So that link was active, was published very recently. I am going to say this is a very current article, and I'm going to go to my next question, which has to do with relevance. So relevance is where we want to think about how important is this information for our needs, how specific and in-depth is it an appropriate level? We don't want it to be too simple, we don't want it to be too advanced. So I really have to do a little bit of reading of the source to figure some of those things out. At the very least, I need to do some skimming of the sections of the source to see if this is going to be useful for me. At the top here, they give me a bit of an overview. So I can see that this is going to be really jumping right into the conversation about bail reform, which is exactly what I want for an argument paper. What are people talking about? It has a section, several sections I can infer, because if there's a section 1, there's got to be at least a section 2, bail reform now. So this is, kind of browsing another story about Khalif Browder, which I saw briefly in that New Yorker article. So this gives me anecdotal evidence. I know that one of my goals in finding good sources is to try to find at least the 3 most important types of evidence, which are anecdotes, data and statistics, and expert opinion. So scrolling through this so far, it's showing me there's anecdotal evidence. It is up to date. I'm going to scroll a little bit more because I'm not really at the stage where I'm ready to annotate and dig into the source yet. I'm just trying to get a sense of whether or not this is going to be a good source for me. Here I see some statistics about Washington, D.C. and the bail system there. I want to see what other sections we have. Oh, here we go. Here's some other data. I'd have to click in to see what that means, but that tells me, again, we're getting a variety of types of evidence here, which is a good sign. 2, lessons from sentencing reform. So this gives me, here I see an expert, a professor is being quoted. I can, if I wanted to, I could find out more about this original source at some point. And the source is pretty long. It's giving me a lot of history, a lot of details. While I probably won't need all of the information in this source, this one certainly seems, number 1, incredibly relevant because it starts off with the questions that I'm asking. But number 2, also incredibly, the level of specificity and depth seems really appropriate. It's not super scholarly. It's not super niche in that it's focusing on only a very, very narrow aspect of my topic, but at the same time, I'm already seeing a variety of types of evidence. So this looks, the first 2 elements, like a great source. Now I want to look at the authority. How credible is the creator of the information? This is probably the most important aspect of source evaluation. Who created it? And what is that? What is that person's credentials? So I already talked a little bit about Harvard Law Review, knowing that a law review by any school is going to be something that should be fairly accurate and in-depth as far as a source. And of course, Harvard being probably the most well-known law school, that makes it even better. The next thing I need to look for is if there's an author, and there might not be one. I'm going to click here. Okay, so that link shows me some other articles. Harvard Law Review, if I click there, I get other articles, and I might want to look at those at some point. So right now, I haven't seen the name of an author yet. And it's possible there isn't a specific author. Sometimes articles are written for something. If they're written for Harvard Law Review, they might be written by, 2nd and 3rd year law students collaboratively, and they might not cite specific authors, but I'm going to keep looking. I'm going to scroll to the bottom. Typically, the author's name is going to be at the top near the title, or the bottom in some kind of citation information. I've got tags, I've got a volume and issue number. Something else I could try doing is clicking the PDF to see if that gives me an author name. Doesn't look like it does. I'm pretty happy to see a PDF because this is something I can download and save and annotate really easily if I don't want to use the link, if I want to put this in Notability. Again, I'm going to scroll through. I would think that if there were an author, it would be at the top. I'm going to go back to my source. What I'm going to do to see what their process is, I'm going to look at another article because here I have a by somebody. So I'm going to click onto this one. Yeah. So when the articles, it looks like in Harvard Law Review, when they have an author, it's going to be placed right underneath the title, which tells me that this source I am looking at doesn't have an author. So while that's not great, the fact that this is from Harvard Law Review is really good enough. You want to do your best to find authors and then to find out what their credentials are, but we're not always going to find that with every great source. So we want to keep going and looking for all the other elements that help make a source authoritative. The next A is accuracy. Reliability, truthfulness, and correctness of the content. Where does the information come from? Is it supported by evidence? Has the information been reviewed or refereed? Can you verify any of the information in another source? Are there major spelling, typographical errors, etc.? So just in reading over the beginning and in having gone back and forth between a few different aspects of this page, the design is really clean. No major grammatical or spelling errors stand out to me right now, although I'd have to really read more carefully to really notice that, but so far it looks pretty good. There's also extensive notes, which means that this source is providing footnotes and linking to all of their original sources. And we already looked at the first source. Let's click this one. This is New York Times. Let's see if they'll let me in. Yeah, I thought so. I already reached my New York Times max for the month. So I'm going to go back, but it did link, so I know the link works. If I click on any of these footnotes throughout the source, I am seeing where all of the information comes from. So I can corroborate that all of the information in the source is accurate by clicking on any of these links. So having footnotes like this is a huge win. It's a hugely important sign that this information in the source is accurate. Then the last area that we want to look at is purpose. Why was this website or article created? If the purpose was to sell something, you want to be careful about that. If the purpose is to persuade, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but you do want to be aware of that. So again, this is from Harvard Law Review. It seems so far like the purpose is to give a lot of background information about bail reform, as well as to situate the topic within a current conversation, which is basically exactly what I'm looking for. They're not selling anything. It's not entertaining. There might be some persuasive elements here, but for the most part, there is factual information. The primary purpose seems to inform and to inform about this very particular topic. The point of view appears to be somewhat impartial. Again, I'm going to have to read more specifically, but let's, looking at this paragraph. They're telling us about a process. There's not really room for somebody to, kind of bring their opinion into that. Here we're getting extended definitions. We're getting reference to empirical studies. Overall, the purpose definitely seems to inform, which again makes it seem like a really great source. So since I have determined that this source works for me, I want to put it in my works cited page. So I'm going to open my project again and go back to create new citation. This time I was just using Google. So I'm going to click website. Once again, then I have to figure out what it is I am looking at. So I'm going to go back. And I'm going to try to figure out if this would be considered a website, or if this would be considered something more specific. Typically, even for something like the New York Times, which is a periodical, if you're accessing it from the web, you're getting a website. Okay, I'm going to kind of go down to the bottom and see if there is other information that tells me about this source. It does give me a volume and an issue number, which indicates it is perhaps a magazine or even an academic journal. But for now, click Harvard Law Review again. It's the same page. Let's click About. Board of Editors membership. Student-run organization. That's what I thought. I thought monthly from November through June. Independent Harvard Law School student editors make all editorial and organizational decisions. Okay, I could, if I wanted to, contact them. This tells me about the purpose of Harvard Law Review, designed to be an effective research tool for practicing lawyers and students of law. Most student writing takes the form of notes, recent cases, and recent legislation. Notes are approximately. That's what we're looking at. We have a note. They're written by third-year students. Okay, that's what I thought. Student writing is unsigned. Okay, that's why we couldn't find an author. And this is because many people contribute. Okay, that's again what I thought. All right, so I'm going to make the call to cite this as a website rather than an academic journal because of the fact that it's written by law students and is not peer-reviewed. So I'm going to click Web Page. First thing I need is the URL. So I want to get back to my source. Copy. Paste. Date of publication, we know was April 14th, 2019. Date of access is the same. We don't have contributors to the website, so I actually have to leave this blank. Web page or document title. I'm going to copy it, paste it, but I need to double check that everything follows MLA. Remember, I need to capitalize first words, last words, proper nouns, all major nouns. Basically, I'm capitalizing everything except for conjunctions, prepositions. And that's actually it. And it looks right. Bail reform and risk assessment, cautionary tale. Okay, I'm also not getting a warning sign that I did something wrong. Then the name of the website is Harvard Law Review. Publisher of the site. This is usually found on the bottom. Sometimes it's found on the home page. Harvard, okay, so it's right here. Harvard Law Review 2019. We know that's the publisher because it's right by the copyright date. Good to know in MLA, the new MLA, if the name of the publisher is the same as the name of the website, you actually don't name the publisher again. So since the name is the same, I'm not going to put it in. Contributes to the site as a whole. I'm not going to include that because my sense from this site is that even though I could find the editorial board, wow, that's a lot of people. So that's a huge sign right there. If it was one or two people, then I'd put it in, but this is a lot of people. which means I actually don't need to. That's way too many names. No one would ever expect you to cite all these names. And we don't actually know which one of them contributed to this article, so we're going to leave it without that information. Addition, we don't have, it doesn't have an addition or a version, so we're basically done. We're going to click save. The source is going to be, because there's no author, the first part of the source is going to have the quotation marks around the title, and that's going to be how I end up citing the source. But that is my citation for this webpage.